Alas, poor Saturn. We only have known him, well, technically we've known him for like 20-something years, ever since they were introduced after Jaya and everything. But personally, we've only known you a short time. And yet we still hate you because of everything you've done to Kuma, to Ginny, to Bonnie, to so many other slaves, all the harm you've caused in the world. So we're happy to see you go. Bye. Appropriate. I bought that skull a while ago because it was on sale at wherever the heck I was, and I'm like, oh, this can come with me. I'll use this most definitely in a video of some kind. And was like, well, now it works. It's just been sitting in my closet for a while. Plus, I pulled out my other Halloween stuff. So, yay, spooky season. So, time for chapter 1125. I'll get the numbers eventually. 11,125, 1125, 1125, whatever you want to go with. What constitutes death? So, yeah. There's going to be a skull later in this and a Frankenstein-esque monster. I had a pop vinyl of Frankenstein's Bride, and I have no idea where the L it ended up. Where the heck it ended up. It's somewhere in this house, but I don't know where off the top of my head. I thought it was in with my other Halloween stuff. Apparently not. Maybe it'll get found at some point in time, but whatever. Because there is a semi-Frankenstein-esque being that will be in the later on in the chapter. So we start off back on Yamato's story. So Yamato has made his way to Kuri, made his way to where they are currently rebuilding Odin's castle that had been burned down by Kaido 20 years ago after he had executed Odin, and then again very recently when Luffy and the others were using it as like a hideout. Or Kinemon and such was using it as a hideout, and Kaido finally just, burned it the rest of the way to the ground, including the graves. So Yamato has shown up there, and we find out that these kidnappings seem to have continued, because we know previously Yamato saved the woman from being kidnapped on the road, and we didn't see who it was that was trying to kidnap her. Now, Yamato, probably having safely escorted the woman to possibly just to Kuri anyway, has found out that there is someone else who has been kidnapped, and it is actually Minatomo, who is the carpenter who Frankie apprenticed with while he was Frenosuke, hiding out in Wano and everything like that undercover. Minatomo is also the same guy who had been part of building Kaido's castle 26 whatever years ago, 25-ish years ago or so, way back during the Wano flashback. So he was part of that. He also apparently had a brother or something that lives in the East Blue, I guess. So Minatomo is currently missing, and he's apparently the head carpenter who's helping with rebuilding Odin Castle. So Yamato's gonna have to go off and find Minatomo. Into the actual chapter. So we start off at Egghead. And we start off with where the Marines and Cypher Pole and Saturn are at the moment. So the Buster Call has been halted on Egghead. I'm pretty sure Saturn just has the ability to go, stop the cannons. So there's that. So we see, we're getting some information. It's just load the Seraphim as soon as they're charged as far as the weaponized Sea Beast and Mark III Pacifista. So the Seraphim have been let out of their bubbles. They've been charged. They've probably been given an order by Saturn to currently obey the Cypher Pole agents or whatever that are there. And, so they're probably either in the charging stations that they had been in before, or they're just charging up some other way. And so that means that the government actually at the moment has control of all 7 of the Seraphim, which is not good. I know a lot of us had been hoping for maybe at least S-Bear could have gone with Bonnie and with the Straw Hats and been able to take over trying to protect Bonnie, since Kuma can't really do that very well anymore. have, S. Bear go with them. That would have been nice, but that didn't happen. Although that might lead to something down the line if S. Bear has the same setup as all of the Pacifista do, where it's like Bonnie is the hierarchy of that, and if all the Pacifista will obey her, then maybe S. Bear will obey her as well, but she just never really got a chance to interact with S. Bear once she found out that information, so we haven't gotten a chance to see if she can. We also see that Lucci and Kaku are both semi-okay. Lucci seems to have been bandaged up after his, fight with dealing with Zoro and getting shredded and then getting, basically sand thrown at his face by Jinbei, and then they escaped. And then giving his report to Marcus Mars. So they're getting onto one of the ships and everything, and they're like, Kaku-san, Lucci-san, wait, where's Stussy-san? And Lucci is just like killed in action. And it's just like, well, technically the last time he saw her, he stabbed her. So, yes. But last time Kaku saw her, she was, fairly well and bandaged and heading off to go do her own thing. So we don't know where Stussy is at the moment. Given what's going to happen later in this chapter, there's the possibility we might know where she is, or at least a possibility of where she could have gone. So we'll see. Lucci is just kind of like, yeah, whatever, he doesn't care. Kaku is kind of like hiding his emotions at the moment. We don't really see his face very much. So now we cut over to Saturn, and he's on whatever naval ship he was on. It's like, we obtained everything we set out for. With York, Punk Records, and the power station in hand, we have secured access to the Eternal Mother Flame. That result would have been more than adequate, but we had one critical hiccup. And then we have all of the 9 vice admirals that were there, that were the ones that were part of this. So there's Guillotine and Dahl and Bluegrass and Doberman and Pomsky and Hound, Red King. I'm missing one, but I just can't remember what his name is, so I know it's there. There's like 2 of them that I'm missing there, but whatever. Like, so we see all of them lined up, and they're all like apologizing. And it's just like, we're terribly sorry, sir. It was a disgrace that we failed to capture Jewelry Bonnie and the Straw Hat crew. Even with our grand Buster Call fleet, the 9 of us vice admirals couldn't get the job done. Please give us leave to pursue them to Elbath. So it's like they want to go after them to Elbath. So side note on that, as we found out earlier on in the arc, we know that Dahl has a connection to Saul. The 2 of them had been friends a long time ago, before Saul had, defected from the Marines and everything like that, and everything happened with O'Hara. I also don't remember if we've gotten Dahl's age at the moment, but she's at least, I would assume she's at least 40-something, if not pushing 50, if she knew Saul for, 22 years ago before everything happened. But so there's the possibility that if they did go after them, and if they made their way to Elbath, although Saturn, I think, is going to say, yeah, don't worry about it. It's like, nah, we're not going to worry about that right now. If Dahl happened to go to Elbath and find out that Saul was alive, there's a possibility that there might be a little bit of like maybe she'll flip sides. Maybe she'll go like the more honorable route type of a thing. We'll see. But Saturn is like, no, forget Elbath. The failure to which I refer to is far more dire. Allowing Vegapunk's message to play was an unexpected disaster, not to mention that Iron Giant surfacing to aid in the pirates' escape. It's ironic, really. And, so we get close-ups of some of the admirals, and Saturn's just kind of sitting there. He seems perfectly fine. They all have, they all seem like maybe they've gotten cleaned up, but, they probably still have, some dirt on their clothes or whatever from the whole fight that just happened. And this is clearly at least enough time later for all of them to have waken up, because we saw that all of the vice admirals were all knocked out in the previous chapter because of the hockey bomb. So we cut back to roughly 200 years ago. We're seeing Saturn's flashback. And to when the Iron Giant attacked Marijois. So we have him talking to what were probably some of the top scientists at the time. And they're like, but Saturn, we've already received orders to scrap it. But St. Saturn, we've already received orders to scrap it. It will take, and he's like, I will take responsibility should this be uncovered. Now, do as I bid and study it thoroughly. Really? So, the scientists were given previous orders to scrap the giant. Saturn's like, no, I want you to study this thing. Which is kind of like, again, biting himself in the butt. And he's like, this is the future. I am certain it will ultimately prove to be a great asset to our military might. You want to go with that? Sure. And we get like a little close-up of the scientists, and they're like, oh, thank you for the opportunity. It would have been a shame to junk such an exciting specimen. So, this is 200 years ago. These scientists are all long dead. All of them look pretty old. We see 2 men and a woman. Nothing about them is like flicking on any like specific type of like, maybe they're references to some other scientists that are part of history, but they probably are. Some other variation of scientists or whatever. And, so Saturn is still thinking so. It remained dormant for 200 years, and yet it clearly moved to protect Straw Hat Luffy. And then we cut to Doberman, who does the stupid thing, and it's going to end up resulting in him very badly injured in a moment. He's like, Saint Saturn, as a humble and loyal soldier of the government, I have one question weighing on my mind. You said allowing Vegapunk's message to get out was a failure. Does that imply there was some truth behind his remarks? And Saturn just glares at Doberman, and then Doberman's head kind of just like explodes the way that we saw earlier on in the arc when, Saturn first transformed and one of the lower ranked Marines looked at him and head go bye-bye. So I like the fact because, well, I don't like that happened, but it's just like, A, why would you ask that? You already know that this is probably a bad idea, so don't talk to him about this. I wouldn't have said anything. I would have been like, well, first of all, I don't know if I would have been, I wouldn't be a vice admiral, first of all. Second of all, I probably wouldn't have asked this if I was in Doberman's position, because it's just like, let's not, anger the guy who's in charge of us right now and who we just saw turn into a giant demon spider thing along with the 4 other elders who somehow showed up here with demon summoning circles and turned into yokai of their own. I'm not going to question him. I'm not going to see if I get in trouble for this, so no, I wouldn't do that. I certainly wouldn't do that. And what ends up happening is, so he, his head gets kind of exploded. We see blood everywhere, and then we see, I think it's Vice Admiral Guillotine. It's just like, oh, Vice Admiral Doberman, and they're like, oh no, we need a medic. Slap one of them awake. So all the medics are still out there. It's just like, go slap one of them awake, and they're like, Vice Admiral. So it's like they're all panicking. And we cut out to where we see up in the, it would have been in the labo phase, so it's inside of the lab, and we see Punk Records, which is the top half of the egg dome. And York is inside of Punk Records still. And it's just like, she's like, what's happening? Sky clouds. And she's like, oh, this is not good. And it's like, they aren't stopping. So it's like the machine is still going. So Edison had, turned up the sky clouds to like max production. So it's still going. And now what's basically happened is, it's overflowing all over the place, and she's like, they aren't stopping. Why is the cloud factory going haywire? It must be Edison, that damn fool. He couldn't just roll over and die in the Fabrostratum, could he? So she's pulled out her laser bazooka, or whatever it is that she has, and she's trying to, I guess, figure out where Edison is, because supposedly Edison pulled the same thing that Atlas did to York, or Atlas did to Lilith, where he disconnected himself from Punk Records at the moment a little while ago. And she's now fired at where he is. So I'm assuming Edison is actually fully dead. And given what we're going to see in a couple of panels, Edison is most definitely 100% dead at this point in time. So yeah, R.I.P. Edison. But what ends up happening is she fires, and it must hit where Edison is, and that seems to be enough because it looks like Edison tricked her into firing at, like, I guess maybe one of the hinges that was holding Punk Records in place, and had her specifically fire at that to then release it. So now Punk Records is the top part where Punk Records is, where, you know, Vegapunk's brain is and everything like that, is now kind of like free from the rest of it. And I like this. So what happened was, now a bunch of the island clouds are like gathering together around the base of this, and now it's floating up. So now now Punk Records, Vegapunk brain and all, is now floating up into the sky. And did they say that... Okay, so I just want to double check on this. Did they say that the Mother Flame was inside of Punk Records, or that it just happened to be that it's still within that top part of Punk Records, or was it in a lower area? I don't remember. So there's the possibility that the Mother Flame is currently inside of this bit as well and being floated away. and York is like, damn it, I've been played. Which is just funny. He's like, he's taken Punk Records! So she's just pissed at this point in time, which is just funny. So from there, we cut back to the Holy Land of Marijois, and we see, Castle Pangea and everything, and all the city laid out around them. And of course, this is still taking place while the Revolutionary Army are still causing, the food and supply barricade, so there's not food getting up to Marijois, so the Celestial Dragons are starving, and they're like, oh, we don't have bread, all we have is cake. Thank you. So we have them still complaining, as they always do, and they're just like, what do you mean? That damned Vegapunk can't be telling the truth. What is Akainu doing? He still hasn't done anything about Kuma's escape. So they're still angry about Kuma escaping. They're still angry about Vegapunk's message, even though they don't really have much understanding of what it is that happened. And they're just like, besides, the world sinking doesn't affect us, as will get pointed out by, Koala reinforces this. Koala or Sabo. I think it's Sabo that reinforces this later on. And they're just like... And so they're like yelling at their cooks, who are either slaves as well, or they're... Okay, so we learned about the Yong cooks. We don't know what all of them look like. We know what one of them looks like. But we learned about the Yong cooks, who are these different, like the 4 best cooks in the world. And either those ones specifically serve the Gorosei, or they serve all of the Celestial Dragons. So... if they serve only the Gorosei, and probably Im by extension, because it's like, if you're the ruler of the frickin' world, I would be like, no, I want to have the best food possible. I will have the best food, the best clothes, the best whatever possible. If I'm trapped inside of this damn castle for all of eternity, I will have the best of everything possible. That would be my intention if I was somehow ruler of the world. I will have the best food and the best bed and the best everything else possible. So we just see the Celestial Dragons are just complaining. What is with these scraps, you buffoon of a chef? I ordered beef. Why did you serve me fish? And it's just like, I'm so terribly sorry, your worship. Our stocks have dwindled. And it's like, this is unheard of. So he either he shoots his chef. So it's just like, hopefully that's not one of the 4 Yong cooks. And we just see a bunch of the other Celestial Dragons just arguing. It's just like, this food issue has gone on too far. I not only missed a meal yesterday, I wasn't allowed any snacks. Unacceptable. Treated like a common street rat. Is there a famine? Will we survive? We must sentence whoever's responsible to death. No, there's not enough. I can talk. The negligent scum responsible should be tortured for their mismanagement. It's like they're just getting angrier and angrier. And these are different celestial dragons. I don't think we've seen any of these guys before, as far as I can tell. But they're all just angry and shouting and complaining like whiny little children. Which is kind of what the celestial dragons are. They are whiny little children. Out on the majority. So from there, we cut to the Room of Authority. And we see the other four Gorosei. So all of them minus Saturn are all there. And they're all back in their usual positions. Saturn's chair is empty. It's going to get filled in a second. And in has walked Figerland Garling. In a very dapper suit, might I add. With a cape. And they're like, Garling, what are you doing here? What do you think you're doing here? And he's just like, new orders have been bestowed upon me. And he's like walking in and he's still got his sword. So it's just like, haha. Nosturo, you're no longer the only Gorosei with a sword. Ha. And Mercury is like, new orders? From whom? Jupiter's like, what are you saying, Garling? Mars, tread lightly, you forget yourself. And Nosturo's just like, And Garling kind of takes off his glasses and is just like, as Vegapunk, the Vegapunk known as York, shall henceforth be under my purview, as I was just named the new defense science warrior god. And Mars is just kind of like, don't tell me. And it's either like a don't tell me, like the oh no, or it's like the oh god no. One of the two. And Garling is continuing, and he's like, the world is heading for turmoil. An unprecedented level of rebellion is imminent. Let us work together to build the world, to better the world, my fellow elders. So, and he has a new caption now. It's like, 5 elder planets, Saint Garling Figerland, or Figerland Garling, whichever way you want to put it. Defense science warrior god. He got a raise. Saturn's about to get a demotion. So, yeah. Well, good news, Shanks. Your most likely father is now a Gorosei, so, you know, whatever. I don't know if you're happy about that or not. Your dad got a raise. You know, your dad got a raise at work, Shanks. We'll see how that goes. But, so, the other ones are not necessarily happy about this. Figerland might be kind of like inside, kind of like a little giddy dance inside, like, oh yeah, I'm a Gorosei now, ha 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 ha. Now we're gonna get something is gonna happen to Saturn in a moment, and we're gonna find out if anything's gonna happen to Garling. Probably not. Well, we don't see anything else. I don't think of Garling in this chapter, but we'll see if that leads to anything in another chapter where we get maybe some, if Garling has some new powers that we're going to find out about later on down the line. So we cut to Egghead. And Saturn has apparently started to feel the effects of his demotion, of his failure. And Saturn is screaming and like clawing at his own throat and just screaming, and there's all this like black smoke and lightning and whatever coming off of him and flames coming off of him while this is going on. And all the admirals are like, Saint Saturn, what's going on? What's happening, sir? Because like they have no idea what the F's happening, which is fair. And they're like, where are those medics? Hurry up, we need them. And Dahl is just like, oh no, Saint Saturn, what's going on? And Saturn is screaming again, still, while this is going on. The others are just like, he's one of the world's overseers. We can't let anything happen to him. And they're just like, is it some sort of disease? Saint Saturn, tell us, what should we do? And Saturn is just starting to shrivel up as like just all of his, the power, you know, the smoke and everything like that, that's, you know, billowing from him as he's like being burned away. He's like shriveling up, and all of those like incountable years, at least over 200, if not far more than that, depending on how long he's been a Gorosei, are just being pushed on his body all at the same time. And Saturn is thinking, no, it can't be. And we see all the bunch of the admirals are just like horrified looks on their faces. And Saturn is like begging with Im-sama to like stop this. And Im-sama is just like, Saturn, Joy Boy was behind that escape and you allowed it to happen. And Saturn is begging, is like, have mercy. How could it... How could I anticipate that power foiling us? And he's just like screaming, and like the boat is, I think the boat is on fire, by the way. I think the marine ship they are currently on is on fire as all of this is happening around them. And the admirals are just, the vice admirals are just like, oh my god, what the F is going on? And there's more screaming. This is probably going to be drawn out a bit in the anime, which I am perfectly fine with. We'll probably get more detail of like Saturn just aging just so far as this is happening. And just more screaming, more smoke and fire and everything like that. And then skull. Rattle, rattle, rattle. And they're just like a skeleton, and there's just like a skeleton lying on the floor as like all of the other as all of the smoke is just being like pulled away from it. So there were a couple of things this reminded me of that I wanted to bring up, just because it felt like something that made sense to reference. So the first one that popped into my head was in the movie Anastasia, the animated movie Anastasia. I think it came out in 1997. Eventually I'll get to doing my non-Disney animated movie reviews. I'll eventually get to Anastasia. But there's the scene in Anastasia because there is Rasputin, and he has this reliquary that he uses in order to be able to, you know, control the dark forces and everything like that. And Anastasia smashes it in the movie during the climax of the movie, and that makes him die. And like we just see his, you know, skeleton rattling around on the ground and like dissolving and everything like that, and he's just turned into a pile of dust and everything. So that was one thing it made me think of, hence the thumbnail. The second one that it made me think of was in the movie Tangled, the Disney movie Tangled, about Rapunzel and everything. There is Mother Gothel, who has been using the power from Rapunzel's hair for the past, 18 years in order to remain young. And so during that time frame, she's, gotten quite old. She just hasn't been, showing her age. And when Flynn cuts Rapunzel's hair, that then, and all of the hair power starts, draining from it. The hair's power starts draining from it. And Gothel, it's, all of the years start rushing back on Gothel, and she's like, no, and, she's, starts shriveling up and, is like hidden under the hood and then falls out of the window and turns into a skeleton and then dust before she even hits the ground. So it reminded me of that. Also kind of just reminds me a little bit in the Harry Potter, in Deathly Hallows Part 2 for Harry Potter, when Voldemort dies, how he just kind of, flakes away. So all those things kind of reminded me of, like, this moment happening here with Saturn, which is kind of funny. But still, like, okay, that's gonna be... I have a feeling there's going to be, like, some type of chanting going on in the background while this is happening, like chanting in Latin or something like that is going to get played in the background while all of this is happening, while Saturn is having all of his power drained out of him, because that just seems like a good idea. And I mentioned this before, there is green that is generally used in a lot of these cases. It's used in the Rasputin scene, and even though it's not Disney, it's used in the Rasputin scene. It's a very similar green to, like, the green fire that's, like, associated with, like, Maleficent and other Disney villains tend to have, like, this green color associated with them. So it's like, while this is going on, if there's, like, flashes of green happening in the fire while this is happening with Saturn. That would be a very nice homage to anything like that. But like those were the things that I thought of. And we're gonna cut back to Egghead Island now, or at least the flying punk records that is being carried away by the island clouds. And we're going to find out that the 4 of the other 6 Vegapunks are not entirely gone, because their consciousnesses are still alive inside of punk records, and all of that because of Vegapunk. And this explains in the last chapter why Lilith was like able to go like, yes, I get it, I understand, I get it. It's like, yeah, she was sad that they were all dead, and then she's like, oh, no, it's fine now, we're good. And so we find out what she was communicating with, and she was communicating with this bit going on here in punk records. And so we have Shaka. Looks like we weren't able to move the Labostratum 2. So he's kind of annoyed by that, and Atlas is like, that traitor York got in the way. And Pythagoras is like, the signal reaches across the globe, so she'll still be able to connect. And Edison is like, but that's better than handing her the whole thing on a silver platter, ain't it? So that's flying away. And then Shaka is still like, until the day all of humanity can access our brain, we have to keep it safe. It'll probably be best it'll probably at least 500 years, I assume. You used a roaming cloud, and Edison is like, you got it, but the whole world will reckon us Vegapunks are 6 feet under, so it ain't like we can leisurely tour the world now, right? And Pythagoras is like, true, and with no funds or resources, we can't keep inventing either. And Edison's like, we'll just have to leave that to our partners. So we cut down into I'm assuming this is part of punk records, and it kind of answers the questions for like why they were able to fix Atlas so quickly when everything happened. When Atlas got beat up by Lucci. So we cut, and this is where we get like the Frankenstein-esque monster, which is just adorable. So this is so cute, and so funny. So we basically get an amalgamation of these 4 Vegapunks. So we have Shaka's body, as in like torso and legs. We have Edison's head on Shaka's body. We have the right arm of Pythagoras and the left arm of Atlas, which just looks so much bigger than Pythagoras, which is just so funny. And they're just like, clip, okay, we're all ready. And it's just like, how do we look? And Atlas is just laughing, and she's like, absolutely bonkers is what we look like. And Shaka is just like, I see you always admired my lovely proportions, huh? Which is like, yeah, he's him and Atlas and or Shaka and Lilith were like the only 2 like human looking ones. Well, York looked human. She was very, very big. Atlas kind of looked like a child, but she clearly was like a giant-ish type thing. And then Edison is just like, shut up, you noodlehead. You knucklehead. And then we see like this long hallway where we see all of these other parts of the Vegapunks. So we see like a bunch of the bodies that are York, and we see like faces and such of Atlas, and heads of Pythagoras, and heads of Edison. And and like probably like, you know, I think we see like a couple of Lilith's heads and different things like that. So it's just like all of these spare parts for all of them, which we were, you know, generally we've been under the impression that like all of the Vegapunks, while Lilith and York appear to be fairly humanoid, and while Shaka seemed to be fairly humanoid, you know, Pythagoras and Edison and Atlas were all clearly robotic. Or at the very least, Edison and Pythagoras were clearly robotic in the beginning, and then Atlas kind of showed that when she was, you know, smoking on all of the cybernetics coming out of her. So, but York also still has to eat and digest and everything like that, so it's just like, they're on like this big spectrum of like whether or not they're, you know, very much more a biological creature in the form of like York and Lilith and Shaka, up to where like Pythagoras and Edison are all on the other end, where it's just like Pythagoras and Edison shouldn't have to eat or sleep or drink or go to the bathroom or anything like that, but they still have those urges because they're connected to York. Because they were connected to York. And so I like Atlas is like, let's toss York's spare parts out. And they're like, yeah, good thinking. They're creepy. I love that. And then, so I guess it's kind of like Edison is the one that's kind of in control of this, like, body amalgamation that they made. So it's like, we'll still have Shaka and Atlas and Edison and Pythagoras still in this story. And, you know, we'll still have Lilith and she'll be able to connect to the others and everything like that. And maybe they'll figure out a way of preventing York from being able to connect to Punk Records. Maybe there's something they can finagle to work on that or something like that. Would have been a smart idea for, I don't know, Vegapunk to maybe do something like that a week ago before all of this happened in the first place. But, you know, what are you going to do? They first found out that York was a traitor. So Edison has now gotten on to the Dendenmushi, and he is calling Witheria, which is hilarious. And he's like, Witheria, come in. Anyone there? This here's Vegapunk. And Herodias, who is, of course, the weather wizard that, you know, helped Nami during the 2-year time skip, answers, and he's just like, Vegapunk? I thought you were dead. So it's just like, I mean, I think I made some comment about, like, maybe Vegapunk has had some type of communication with Witheria at some point in the past, and now this proves that there would have been some communication between them at some point. I mean, like, they're studying weather, which is science and climatology and, you know, and climate and everything like that, and meteorology and all of that stuff. So it's like, yeah, I would assume there's some connection there. And there is. So now there's that. So we'll see if maybe the next time we see see Punk Records, Herodotus will be there and him and Nami can be reunited and whatever else. You know. I mean, I'm sure she'd be happy to see him, but still. And now we're going to cut to the Kamabaka Queendom, which is where we're going to stay for the rest of the chapter. So, they're all talking and like, they're like, oh no, how grisly, what's going to happen? Are we going to die? I don't want to die! No. And it's just like, no, water's going to kill me. No, it's like, no, water's gonna kill me. I can swim. Which, I mean, out of all of the Revolutionary Army members, Dragon probably has a devil fruit, but we don't know what it is yet. Sabo has one. Ivankov has one. Belabetti has one. Karasu has one. Morley has one. So that's 6 of them that have devil fruits. Koala does not. Hack does not. Lindbergh does not, as far as we are aware, because we haven't seen Lindbergh demonstrate any type of devil fruit ability, so I'm assuming Lindbergh does not have one. And then out of the lieutenant commanders, we don't know if any of them have devil fruit powers, simply just because we haven't seen them. We know there was the one that ate the binoculars earlier, so there's a possibility he has one that allows him to eat something, but I don't know. But, like, for the most part, we don't know if anybody else in the Revolutionary Army has a devil fruit. So it's just like, well, most of them can swim. So that's not the... Oh, and Inazuma. I can't forget about Inazuma. Don't want to forget about him. He has, you know, the Snip Snip fruit, so there's that. But it's just like, I don't really know if there's... You know, a good chunk of them don't seem to have devil fruits, which is very useful because it means they can save the ones that are drowning if they land in the water. It is just like... And Koala is, like, summing up what's going on. She's like, to put it bluntly, none of us knew these details. The Void Century covered up to a massive war, and that culminated in ancient weapons tech, plunging the world 200 meters deeper into the ocean. So we see Koala sitting there writing, and we see, I think Ushi is the cow, Ahiru is... the female lieutenant commander, and then there's the other one that ate the binoculars that I cannot remember his name. off the top of my head. And so she's like summing up everything that, like, kind of summing up what they heard in the message. And then she's like, not only that, but the one who claims the One Piece will not only be crowned Pirate King, they'll likely get to wield that devastating power for themselves. And Bella Betty's like, we can't let that happen. And we see Morley, and we see Ivankov, and we see a whole bunch of the other members of the Revolutionary Army as they are now outside of the palace and talking. And there's probably a bunch of, like, the ones that just arrived from Lelucia are there as well, that Sabo brought with him. And we're going to see Sabo in a minute, and Ivankov. So, like, Moda and stuff like that are probably going to be there, along with a bunch of the Okamas from Kamabaka. And Bella Betty is like, the world will sink. I was like, yes, to be fair, depending on who gets to the One Piece first and claims that power, yes, they could cause a lot of problems in the world, but it also just depends on who's the one who finds it first. Luffy is a little bit left up for debate if him finding it would necessarily be a bad thing. You know, Kobe finds it, probably a good thing. The Revolutionary Army find it. Dragon, Sabo, stuff like that, probably a good thing. Blackbeard, probably not. Buggy is a little bit like, maybe, but it depends on what Crocodile and Mihawk want to do with it, and we'll see what Crocodile would want to do with it. And then, you know, you got Garling and the rest of the Gorosei now, and you got the, you know, Akainu and Blackbeard and all that other stuff where it's just like, I don't know what's going to go on here. There's so many players on the board in this regard. And Sabo's like, this explains why the first Celestial Dragons chose to live on the Red Line. It's the highest point in the world. It's like, well, yeah. And then Ivankov's like, there's also Tequila Wolf, Vodka Wolf, Rum Wolf, and Bourbon Wolf. Is this why they've spent the last 700 years forcing slaves to build those gigantic structures? So, ever since we were first introduced to Tequila Wolf way back, you know, prior to the time skip, when Robin got sent there and we kind of get this information there, we were all kind of under the general impression that, like, this bridge, apparently there's 4 other ones, probably in all 4 of the blues, and I love that they're all named after some type of, you know, alcoholic beverage. There's the Vodka Kingdom, and there's the Vodka Wolf for the giant bridge, which is funny. But so it's like there's 4 of these things, probably 1 in each blue, and that for like the past 700 years they've been being built. So that would have been prior to anything happening with the Iron Giant attacking them, with Emmett attacking them. But it could have just been like, maybe they had to use something of the laser and it made the sea levels rise. So like, oh, okay, we need to have something planned ahead of time in case something like this happens again. And they started building the bridges. We were always under the impression that, like, it was just being built on a whim because one Celestial Dragon wanted a bridge built from this island to another island, either because they didn't want to sail that distance or whatever. Now it seems like it might be a little bit more planned out, possibly. So there's that. And then Karasu's like, all the pieces are falling into place. Lindbergh, you took the words right out of my mouth. Morley, mine too. And then we cut to Dragon for the last bit of the chapter, and we cut to Dragon, and he's off on the beach, staring off probably into the east. We don't know, but probably to the east. Although, Luffy is not in the east right now. Luffy is on the other side of the Grand Line. On the other end of the New World, so it's just like, Maybe he's like, okay, what direction do I have to stare at to get me close enough to stare at where my sun is on Punk Hazard? Like, where's Dragon? Like, he's doing that calculation. Does he have, like, marks around the island of, like, this direction points east, this direction points here, this here, just, like, all the way around the island? Does he have moments like, does he have stuff like that allows him to do that? I don't know, that'd be funny. But he's like, Vegapunk, among those who heard your warning, many will act out in self-interest, not peace. We must hurry and achieve victory for our cause before the people of the world kill each other to secure habitable land. So, yeah. I went blurry. Sorry. So, yeah, in that regard, it is quite possible that, you just look at human history. They have fought many a war over resources and land and everything else like that, for crops, for gold and oil and so many other things like that, and salt, and wars have been fought over so many things in that regard. And when it comes to types of resources and things like that, natural resources, food, take your pick, waterways and everything like that. Although waterways may not be as big of an issue in this regard, just because like the whole world will be possibly covered in water beyond the top of the red line and some other very high islands or high enough islands. So we'll have to see what happens there. I just had a thought. So there's supposedly these 4 bridges that are being built. Well, we know at least, well, we've seen Tequila Wolf. There's 4 others, 3 other ones, probably one in each blue. What if... Okay, so we've known almost since everything happened in the Water 7 arc that Water 7 itself is like sinking, that like it's been built on top of the ruins of past versions of Water 7 for hundreds of years, at least 800 years, because Water 7 has a connection to the Void Century because of Pluton. So, and then we know that Tom had developed the Sea Train and everything like that, and Frankie and Iceberg helped with building it and all of that. They helped that they were building the Sea Train, and subsequently they have connected 4 islands with Water 7 and the Sea Train and Enies Lobby and everything like that. During the time frame that Tom built it, and then subsequently Iceberg has added more tracks and more train and another train to it for the puffing ice. So is that something that could be connected back to these bridges, where like the world government decided to build these bridges, and of course they had their slaves building all of these 4 bridges around the world, and we don't know how long Tequila Wolf is. We don't know how long, physically how long it is, what 2 islands it was supposedly trying to connect. What if the intention was to connect part of this through these blue and try to connect it all the way back to the red line in some shape or form? And then what if all of the other 4, or the other 3 and the other 4 blues, and if that's where they are, were all designed to like try to connect all the way back to connect, like maybe not one island to another, but like one end of the red line all the way across the blue to, or one end of the red line, one side of the red line all the way across the blue to the other red line. So it would be safer for the Celestial Dragons to be able to travel. And then we have the Sea Train that Tom built, probably with nothing actually physically, like he probably didn't take inspiration from Tequila Wolf or anything like that, I hope. But like he built the Sea Train and the tracks and everything like that, and they're designed to like float on the water and like, flow with the waves and everything like that and the motion of the ocean. So that way they can travel from this island to that island, and it's a direct path on the tracks as long as the tracks are still connected to the 2 islands. And what if that was something that ended up being very similar to what was going to happen with Tequila Wolf and all the other bridges? That something like that was supposed to happen, where they were to connect, certain islands that maybe were summer getaways or something like that for the Celestial Dragons, and they were connecting them that way. To be fair, over the course of 700 years, as I said, we don't know how long Tequila Wolf is, how far that actually stretches, how many miles or kilometers or whatever it actually is, because I don't think Oda's ever given us a specific number of that, and we haven't seen, one end to the other, and that this here reference is probably another reason why they pointed out, why Oda mentioned or showed in one of the previous chapters when the Vegapunk's message was going around the world, showed that Tequila Wolf is still up and running. Or maybe that wasn't Tequila Wolf, maybe that was one of the other 3 I don't know if they specifically said it was Tequila Wolf in it, but it makes sense if it is. And if it's not Tequila Wolf specifically, it's one of the other three that was shown, a couple of weeks ago or whatever during the message. So there's that connection that could be drawn, that they could be something similar to the C Train in that regard. But at the moment, we just don't know because we haven't had the chance to get any of that other information. Robin might bring that up to the Straw Hats. That's a possibility. She might tell them about like her time on To Kill a Wolf if she hasn't already done that. But it'll be interesting to see if because that's an interesting comparison there between like the C Train connecting just like those couple islands that were around Water 7, and then using these bridges to connect something together in the different 4 blues, possibly to the Red Line or to something like that, so they would still be able to get supplies to and from Mariegeois down the line when as the tides rose, because they kept maybe using the Uranos again and again, just not as often as they would like, because it would take so much time to like recharge in whatever shape or form. And now if they have the Mother Flame, they can use it to continuously just recharge it again and again, and they can blow up any islands that they need to. Which is going to be, harder to do if they kind of know that something like that's coming, but like it's kind of hard to escape if something like that is coming. Just look at, Independence Day. In some cases, you can try to evacuate all you want, but alien lasers are going to cause a lot of damage in the process. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I'm glad the chapter went up in time because I have to work this evening, and if this went up a whole lot later, I wouldn't have had time to get this all done before then, but it'll be up in time before I go to work, so that'll be good. So, that's what I have here for this. I thank you for watching. There should be another chapter next week, so there's no break. And then there might be a break after that, but we'll see. But that's what we have here. So I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.